Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Giant Pod. This one is in two parts. You're listening to part one. My guest this week is Stu Whiffen, the legendary Stu Whiffen. He is part of the Pink Toothbrush crew. It's a legendary club in Essex. He has been DJing there and booking there for many, many years. He is a regular guest on Scroobius Pip's Distraction Pieces podcast. He's a podcaster in his own right with a very successful Off the Beaten Track, acceptable in the 80s, hardcore listing, and he's part of the Pod Bible magazine crew. We talk about music, we talk about comedy, we talk about the arts, we talk about lockdown, we talk about cancel culture, Black Lives Matter. There's a trigger warning on this episode. We do talk about eating disorders and mental health, especially within men. Stick around for part two. That'll be out a little later in the week. We go through, I have a stack of albums and I go through them with Stu and we see what things he likes and what things he doesn't like. So check this out. I like this one a lot. Here it is.
One, two. Do you, if I put my headphones over my mic, do you want to clap and then you'll find it like your producer be able to just sync it up really easily?
Oh, nice. Yeah, thanks.
I mean, it won't actually do a lot, but I just feel like you're applauding me before we even start. So I like that. Wonderful.
Stu, thanks for joining me.
Mate, thank you very much. I mean, this is just sort of almost a second take, right, Andy? Because I just popped up on your Zoom and we were just sort of having a catch-up as to what's been going on. And then I just thought, this is quite a long catch-up. I was like, is this actually the podcast? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh, man, I said some things I didn't actually want to put out there. I just thought it was doing the fact. So, yeah, we're recording now. We're good.
We're on.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're good. The red light is on. Yeah.
It's lovely to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well, dude. As I said, I've been enjoying your content recently, just trying to get a feel for who you are, figure out what we can talk about, what to say. I got a stack of CDs here because I heard you say in an interview that you're a massive music anorak, and I am very much the same. I've got
wonderful.
Probably 2,000, 3,000 CDs next door on vinyl. I just got a stack of stuff, and a bit later on, I'll just pop a few up, and we'll see what you feel, what they mean to you. It's the first time I've done anything with a bit of a gimmick, but there we go. Okay. We'll give that a go. So, how did you get into podcasting?
Podcasting come about in a kind of interesting way, really. My background was always like bands and I've been an alternative club promoter, an alternative music club promoter for nearly 30 years, and so that's always been my kind of background. But some of the events that I would promote, I would promote with the podcaster and musician and actor Scroobius Pip, who's one of my good buddies, and then I watched Pip sort of get a radio show on XFM, win a Sony award for his radio show, a specialist radio show. And I just thought, this is amazing. He's got no background in radio and he's just launched this show and just smashed it. And then at the height of it, just went, right, well, I've done that. I'm going to start a podcast in a time when podcasts weren't really on everybody's radar, and kicks things off with, another fellow Essex lad, Russell Brand, and then just straight in with just, guest after guest. And he's a brilliant talker, Pip. And then after a while, Pip invited me and my friend Chris on to do a Drunkcast. He's like, look, let's just sit in your bar and have a few drinks and just press record. And I think it was something that, for people that know Scroobius Pip, he's very woke. He's very, he's a smart, articulate guy, performer. And I think it was the first time that people got to see Pip dicking around with his mates like we all do,
Yeah.
And so it seemed to go down really well. And I just thought, I had no idea how many people listened to Pip's podcast. And I thought there might be a few just because of the of his profile and the profile of some of the guests. And And then I think we'd done about 2 or 3 Drunkcasts, and I went, out of interest, Pip, like, how many people have listened to them? He said, like, oh, about 4 million, I think. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
And then the ultimate beer fear you could ever have kicked in, because I just thought, I have just said so much shit on that podcast. I just thought maybe a few thousand were listening. I didn't know. Yeah. And so we started doing them quite regularly, and they were a lot of fun. And then Chris and I, that were the other two of the Drunkcast, set up a podcast called Hardcore Listing. And we mentioned, I know you're friends with Huey Morgan, and Huey has come on and guested on that podcast. And yeah, we get guests on to pick a topic, and then they count down a top 5 within that. And we've had a lot of fun doing that, and we still do it every week. And it's weird. We've had like Hollywood raw, but people like Ed Skrein like turn up on his motorbike, sit in my shed, and count down his top 5 hip hop songs that make him cry. It's like it's been really fun, and it's just kind of, I never in a million years thought I'd be having conversations with actors and musicians and things like that, and it's been so much fun. And so from that, the one thing that kind of took me to the Off the Beaten Track podcast was the fact that every time I'd get a guest on Hardcore Listing that would talk about music, I just wanted to continue that. And as much as Chris is a DJ and he works at mine and Pip's events and stuff, like, he's not a nerd for music like me. And I'm always really interested in how people's lives, how music is so important to it, and how certain points in their life, records will be synonymous with that, and the visualizations when they hear a record, where that takes them, that bang straight back to like, oh, my best mate's bedroom, sitting in there, playing the records, and I've just met this girl, and just things like that. I'm just fascinated at the power that music has with things like that. And so I said to Chris, look, we're still doing Hardcore Listing, but I'm going to do a podcast called Off the Beat and Track, and talk about the areas in which these creative people grow up in, how that influences them, and I think today's episode's like episode 145.
Wow.
And it's been an absolute ride. I've got to kind of, as the podcast has grown, it's been really lovely to get to sit down with. Yeah, I mean, if people are interested in listening, then guests as diverse as, today's episode was with a Spice Girl, with Mel C, and then last week's was Deftones, and James Lavelle, through to Chic, through to Maxine Peake, and it's just been an opportunity to speak to some really wonderful people about their creative journeys and the records that have soundtracked it.
It's great because I feel like, we're both very curious people. I mean, the backbone of the Giant Pod is basically is an excuse to talk to people and be curious, and sit someone down with the guise of, we're going to do a podcast, but really I want to, there's people like you say, I want to talk to you. You know what I mean? Like, whether this is over a beer or a podcast, I want to talk to you. But it just so happens that the podcast is the way to attract many of these people. But it's just about curiosity, isn't it?
And I think it's been so good in lockdown to if you've got a podcast, to use this time, to try and sort of do something positive and record and chat to people. But what I've got from it as well is just a sort of distraction from the ongoing misery of the news.
Yeah.
And I'm totally aware of what's going on and how awful it is. But I think you've all got to try and sort of preserve your sanity in a very, very strange world at the moment. And for me, if I get to connect with people, whether it's over Zoom, then I'm all over that. If it takes me somewhere else for an hour where I get to find out all about people and their lives, and and obviously if we can talk music as well, even better. And it's kept my head where it needs to be during lockdown.
And you've also launched another podcast called Acceptable in the 80s, haven't you?
Yeah.
With Cunt from... is his whole name Cunt in the Gang, or is it just Cunt?
I guess most people know him as Cunt and the Gang, or Cunt from Cunt and the Gang, a one-man band. And I mean, was you aware of Cunt and the Gang?
I wasn't really until it came up when I was sort of doing some research. I did mention it to a mate, and he was like, "Oh, what is he in Cunt in the Gang?" And I was like, "Yeah, probably. It's probably Cunt in the Gang."
So yeah, he's a one-man band, like one-man sort of comedy act stroke band. And as I've watched his career grow and grow and grow, and he's my best friend. But we sit in this very bar that I'm sitting in there, and catch up like once a month and reminisce and talk the same old shit. Each time we tell it, the stories get a little bit more
exaggerated.
That's the word. And so basically, we realised a couple of months ago that in September we would have been friends 40 years. So we've decided to do a monthly podcast, and in each month. So tonight we're actually recording October 1980.
Right.
And so we'll talk about what was in the music charts, what films were out, what was on TV, what we were up to, and in the last 40 years we've been in bands together, we've promoted club nights together, we've DJ'd together, and we've just got into lots of interesting scrapes and banana stories. And for anybody that knows Cunt in the Gang, it's with a K, they'll know what a colourful and unique gentleman he is, and
yes.
And it's been really well received. We've only put out September's episode, and it was a lot of fun, and it seems to be going all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I was enjoying it. I was listening to a bit last night, and was there the part where you used to tell kids that your dad was some sort of medical droid in Star Wars or something? Yeah.
Well, I mean, a little kind of snippet of it was when I was, I think I was probably like 6, and this guy come to my school, and from another school, and the teacher said, "Can you be his friend?" I was like, yeah, no worries, because he hasn't got any mates in this school. So, and then I found out that when I went round his house that he had like motorbikes and go-karts and drum kits, and I was like, man, no one's got stuff like this where I live.
Right.
And turned out his dad was a cameraman, and his dad had like filmed Star Wars and Empire and Flash Gordon and all of these super cool films. And so I just decided when I met Cunt that I was going to tell him that my dad was in Star Wars and played 21B medical droid. I have absolutely no fucking idea why I'd done that. But yeah, and he believed it. I think I might have told him I was a Jawa. And then obviously not long after that, it was like, your dad wasn't 21B medical droid, was he? I was like, nah. But yeah, so it's one of them things that, 40 years later, he's still reminding me of the lie, and he doesn't believe anything I ever say now.
Right.
Like on the strength that 40 years ago, I told him my dad was in Star Wars.
How do you manage your time? Because you've gone into lockdown. I guess the Pink Toothbrush has also gone into lockdown, which obviously freed up a lot of time for you. So now you have how many podcasts you got now? 3? You on 3? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there's Off the Beaten Track, Hardcore Listing, and obviously Acceptably in the 80s. However, I do also co-host the Pod Bible podcast. Right, right. So 4.
Yeah.
So if things go back to normal, and the toothbrush ends up and life goes back to some sort of pre-COVID normality, how are you gonna manage that time?
With a massive fucking smile on my face.
Yes.
Because I like this fucking government is fucking over the live industry, nightlife, self-employed creatives. They're fucked. And I don't know if the government sees no value in nightlife, and it's so important. It's so important. It's ingrained in our culture that this is where people meet their partners. This is where people find their cliques. This is people that, You know, certain clubs, like my club, you know, this is the place, it's a safe haven for the weird and wonderful. If you don't fit in at school and you ain't one of them kind of jocks that goes down the you know, the high street club listening to commercial dance music, and you want to go and listen to, you know, weird alternative music, and, you know, you want to go somewhere and not get fucking pushed around for what you look like, or, you know, how you want to express yourself. We own that club. You know, that's what we've done for 30 years. And it's, you know, and it's sitting there, it's shut for 6 months. And don't get me wrong, not in a million years will we open that club and put anyone at risk in the situation we're in. But that leaves us with our hands tied, that we're paying bills on a venue that we can't open. And it seems so unfair that there's no support being offered by the government. And how many, you know, not just with club life, but with the live music scene, how many fucking roadies, guitar techs, like, you know, people that supply toilets at festivals, people that, you know, it's endless, you know, where you start, and all of these people can't work. Comedians, the amount of, you know, comedians I know that have been on the pod, it's like, that, you know, they can't go and do what they do, that, you know, and aside from it absolutely crippling, you know, their finances, what the fuck is it going to do to people's minds? You know, people need this expression. People need this. It's like, it's what they do. It's who they are, and it's, you know, what gives them joy. And yeah, and if you can't do it, and through no fault of your own, and yeah, it just feels like lots of other industries are getting support, and it just feels like the arts, in many variants of the arts, aren't getting the consideration that others are. And don't get me wrong, there's also many businesses that are so vital, and, you know, and need that support. You know, I'm not saying we're anything special at all, but I do think we should definitely be a consideration, and we should be given some kind of element of reassurance, guidance, help, and it's not there. Got all angry then, didn't I?
Oh, that got deep. But I mean, I feel you. I mean, I watched the Pink Toothbrush 30 documentary on YouTube the other night.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, although it seems like a very unique place, and a place that I would really love to take my hardcore band Sick Ones when all this is over, I'd love to come down and play there. It seems like a place I know very well in its spirit. And so, you know, we've had the good fortune of playing all over the UK, America, and Europe, and the places are the same no matter where you go. Where there's a community of people that are alienated, or they're not part of the norm. You know, you got the hardcore kids, your metal kids, your punk rockers, and everyone's sort of in between. They have this vibe that the staff have a family vibe. The walls have an energy to them. I feel like the Pink Toothbrush seems very much like one of those special venues that when you're on tour and you go, where are we going tomorrow? And then you go, oh, with the Pink Toothbrush, you go, oh, thank fuck, yeah, we'll get looked after there. It'd be great.
It is. It's family. It really is. You know, I've worked there, you know, just shy of 30 years. You know, we've got glass collectors that have worked for us for like 18 years. And it's like,
that's something.
People don't leave.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we lock them in. Like, but no, like literally it's like we've had to start a clothing range to try and pull some money in.
Right.
And the support was just ridiculous. You know, we're famous for having a sticky carpet, like, because it's just it's gross. You know, it's a proper rock and roll venue. It's, you know, it's grimy and black, and all the carpets are just kind of sodden with stale beer and you know, and yeah, and soaked in fucking teen spirit, and yeah, and it's really nice that when we had the carpet changed a year ago, I said hold some back, and we are now cutting the carpet into small squares, framing it, and we're selling it, and people are falling over themselves to own a bit of our sticky carpet. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of that. You know, the people that attend that club, it means something to them.
Yeah. But that's a very damn. If you think about that, it's so damning on our government right now. Is that venues are forced to cut squares of their old sticky carpets, frame them, and sell them to survive.
What's that all about, eh?
Eh? What kind of bullshit is that? It's madness.
Oh man.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, I don't know how I'm pretty atheist, but the concept of ghosts is interesting. Do you think when you pass away, you'll be forever within the halls of the Pink Toothbrush?
Well, I too am an atheist, but I often I kind of, because it's really weird. It's got a really high loft,
right?
But it's like on a sort of suspended ceiling above the club, so you can't actually sort of do anything up there. And every time I ever lift that loft hatch up and look up there, I just kind of expect to see all of the goths from like the mid to late 80s that attended, like upside down, like in Lost Boys, like asleep, just like hanging upside down like bats, just already getting ready for like Friday when they can like resurface again when it's dark. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really cool place, and for any of your listeners that want to know more, then if you just put in Pink Toothbrush 30 into YouTube, there's like an hour-long documentary just about that we made when the club was 30 years old, and Scroobius is on there talking about how he never paid to get in, always used to break in, and like Phil Jubitus, and yeah, there's lots of people that have come through the club over the years, all on there talking. It's it's something I'm fiercely proud of, and yeah, I think anyone that likes alternative music and alternative people and a safe haven for weird and wonderfuls, I think they'll get a bit of joy out of watching that.
What's the I don't want to make you emotional and bring the vibe down, but what's the story with Bert? There was a real emotional beat there in that documentary, and I just sort of like there's a lot of love being felt.
So he was a doorman that worked at the club, and yeah, he was a pretty, like, he wasn't a great big lump of a doorman. He was probably about 5'9", but just worked the door at the weekend to top up the wages, like so many security officials do. And yeah, he was dating a good friend of mine, and then he was only a young man, I think at the time, but it was probably maybe mid-30s, and yeah, just went home one night and didn't wake up the next day, and he was very much, as I said, he'd worked at the club many years, and again was part of the family, and yeah, most importantly, I guess he was, yeah, this girl sort of tapped him on the shoulder when he was doing security by the side of the DJ booth, and I was DJing at the time, and she said, "Oh, do you know the DJ?" He's like, "I'd like to talk to him." And she said, "Like, is he all right? Will he be all right if I go in the?" And he picked her up and he put her in the DJ booth, and he was like, "Right, Carol, this is Stuart, this is Carol," and yeah, and yeah, that was my wife, and and so it was, I guess if it wasn't for him doing that, then I wouldn't be married, I wouldn't have 2 children, and so yeah, like I think that part of the documentary is there's a lot of love expressed for him, and it just, I think, as much as it's only very, very personal to those that knew him in the venue, I think hopefully it comes across in the documentary that the bigger picture of it is that it is a club that's built on love and family, and that family extends way beyond the people that pull your pints and play the records. It goes right the way through to security, and most importantly, the people that come in and dance and express themselves and feel comfortable in our house.
Seem very proud of that, and you absolutely should be. As I said, yeah, there's definitely venues up and down the country, and as I said, all around the world, where they've got that vibe. There's a vibe that they share.
As much as I do think like it's very unique what we, our club. I'm a 47-year-old guy that grew up in bands and DJing all around the country. In lots of places that smell a bit wafty, are a bit grotty. The dressing rooms are a bit shit, but that's kind of it. That's, that's what I expected. That's what I wanted. And if I would have gone in and the venue was pristine chrome and there was a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket, I would have been, wow, what the fuck's going on here? Like, this isn't what I expected,
Right.
I want warm beer and a 6-pack of fucking Golden Wonder crisps like on the table. That's what I want. But yeah, so it was like, there's a million and one of these venues, that cater for alternative people, and they're the lifeblood of them towns. So if you're an alternative kid, and I use that term loosely, that is whether you're into indie music, metal, whatever, it does, hip hop, anything that's not that kind of genre that you're going to get in your high street clubs, then there's nothing wrong with that. They offer something to people that want that. But for some people that don't feel comfortable in them places, the venues that do cater for them, that's their lifeline. That's where, if they're at college and there's only a group of like 5 people that are into that, and and the rest of your college is full of people that aren't, then you need to go where you can find more people like you, and where you
find your tribe.
Completely got to find your tribe, and that's what makes not just the Pink Toothbrush, but all venues like that across the globe, like the lifeblood of them towns, for them people.
Yeah, we played a show in Manchester once, and then afterwards we went to a place called Satan's. Have you ever been to Satan's?
I haven't. No.
It's like a rock club, metal bar club thing.
Of course it is. It's called fucking Satan's.
And in the corner behind the DJ booth is a huge fucking Satan, like a huge sculpture Satan thing. And it's just the strangest sort of venue. And there's like almost like a bandstand, almost like a loose sort of bandstand shape dance floor in the middle with like runoffs on the sides of it. And you get some real characters in there. And the metal room is like literally this little kicked off to the side room. In the main room, you've got your Blink, your Green Day, and your My Chemical Romance. They get your System and your Deftones going on there and stuff. And then you go in the metal room and there's like dudes fully like headbanging and like mouthing every word of Pantera or Slayer. And like you go into that room and it just becomes pure testosterone. It's absolutely crazy. And the ceilings are super high. It's almost like the room that's like, it really is like the metal can, go off to the side there. But it's got so much character.
Well, you touched on tribalism there in music. Yeah. And I think, as I've grown older, I guess as I've grown older, maybe I've become less in touch with youth culture. I guess sometimes that could be a bit creepy if I'm hanging around youth clubs. But like the tribalism, as a 47-year-old guy, I was lucky in 88, 89 to have kind of seen acid house explode, and then to see the Manchester movement, with the Rosies and the Mondays and that, and then to see grunge drop in the early 90s, and then all the stuff that's happening in the UK, in alternative music, then through to like the mid 90s with Britpop and so on, and then nu metal, etc., etc. And it was all very, very tribal. And as a DJ, I don't see that much tribalism anymore. It feels to me, when I look at it in both fashion and things like that, that there seems to be a very generic thing now where lots of people like a lot of everything, which I think it's a 50-50. I think it's really positive that people are open up to other genres and things like that. But when it comes to tribalism, for me, and I'm not a huge metal fan, metalers, they're still doing their thing.
Yeah.
Like
it's not really changed.
No. And that tribalism, whenever I try and think of an example of like, a youth culture or a music culture that is still pretty strong in its image as well as its sound, and it's metal.
Yeah. Did you ever want to see the 90s fashion come back? Because it's back, isn't it?
Yeah.
We are fully in the 90s in terms of high street. Well, not even high street. Well, maybe high street fashion. Mainstream fashion.
Yeah, I'm very all right with my age, and it is weird because a few years ago when I start thinking, I start seeing these like little memes of like Smashing Pumpkins albums for like 25 years old this day, and I think, fuck me, how has that gone that quick? Like,
Yeah.
But I guess I have an affinity with the 90s because I guess that was my years of bands and DJing, as a young man, as a young single man, and just with everything to play for. And I loved it. I loved the fashion, I loved all the youth cultures that come within that, from having my check shirt, shorts and long hair, through to having my Adidas tracksuit top and my mop top, like when Britpop dropped. And literally, I guess the actual haircut I've got now, I also had in the mid-90s. I had a midlife crisis in lockdown and dyed my hair peroxide. I am aware, though, every time I do Zoom now, it does just look like I've gone grey because it matches the grey in my beard now. So what I thought might make me look younger has actually made me look like a pensioner. So that went wrong, mate. So how do you, you're a young man. How do you feel about the 90s coming back?
Well, I was born in 92. So the most of the 90s for me was just sort of just this kid that was being sort of herded through school, and I didn't have an awful lot of autonomy or any cognitive. I was aware of things, but you don't know the time you're in when you're that young. You don't fully you haven't got a concept of before you or out. You've not lived long enough to have any kind of idea of the past, really. So I went through the 90s. We talked about the Spice Girls. I think that may have been in our preamble before we started recording, but I got a sister who's 6 years older than me. So any 90s that I really experienced in a cultural sense would have come through what I was hearing coming out of her bedroom door, which would have been a lot of Spice Girls. Gina G. Remember Gina G?
Yeah.
And she used to dress me up as a Spice Girl. Actually, my granddad was a bit of a dab hand with the old woodwork, and he made us these wooden microphones. And the Spice Girls had this ITV special where they had like the frame around their mic diaphragm was gold, and he made these glittery gold wooden microphones. And there's a picture of me and her in front of my grandparents' door. You always have a picture in front of a white door, don't you? Living room door. And she's dressed me up in the most hideous, like, improvised Spice Girl thing. And we just sort of stood there like that, with these wooden microphones.
I've got a lot of questions. Firstly, what Spice Girl was you?
I think I was Scary Spice.
Wonderful. Have you still got the mic?
No, I wish. That would be great, because he actually did a pretty good job of it. Like, he put see, my granddad was one of those guys. He'd put a bit of the effort in. Do you know what I mean? So I had a go-kart, like you mentioned earlier. Your mate, I had a go-kart. I was really lucky that they had a big old garden. I used to tear around in that. I had basically my toys were a go-kart and an armory. Just like a chest full of toy guns, and this is before they put the orange bits in the ends and that made them look like toys. I had guns that looked like guns. Do you know what I mean? So was your garden like Mad Max? It was like it had some like almost like allotment style bits in it. It was quite a long garden. It was like in the countryside in the village. It was my grandparents' garden, and there was a bit of a track around it, so you could kind of you could kind of maneuver around this garden with the like a serial killer. In a fucking go-kart, tooled up with like guns that look legit. How terrifying, dude! It was amazing. It was a great childhood. I don't know what I was talking about. Culture, 90s. Yeah, my sister. Yeah, I got a lot of the 90s via my sister, basically, because I was too young to really sort of take it all in. It was weird, because I've touched on before, like, growing up in the 90s, I was very much, into guitar music and stuff like that. And so, I was obviously ridiculously aware of the Spice Girls because of who they were. They were a phenomenon. And so, part of me felt like, should I be the person to have a Spice Girl on my podcast? Because surely there's probably millions of like Spice Girls, like absolute uber fans that would love an opportunity to talk to her. But and
obviously, like, I was very aware who she was, and I knew, all the songs, don't you? Because they're ingrained in the fabric of British '90s music culture, and
Yeah.
and do you know what? Like, it was Melanie C that I spoke to, and she was so delightful, and when you look at the amount of 100, I think it's 111 million records she's sold. I mean, that's ridiculous, and I was just interested in finding out how you cope with what as an outsider looking in looked like overnight success.
Yeah.
Ridiculous success that most people in the public eye still would have no concept of. I mean, global superstars, how that messes with your psyche, how that will sort of tweak any insecurities, and magnify them. And yeah, she was really, really, she's just a good soul, and it's got great taste in records as well. And yeah, we had a really good chat, and I'd heard her on Desert Island Discs, which is probably my favourite podcast, and she was just wonderful. And I just thought, I'm going to reach out and see if she'll come on mine. And yeah, it was absolutely blessed, and it was really interesting hearing her talk about, to be so forthright, talking about eating disorders, and talking about, only yesterday I've seen her sort of shouting about trans rights and stuff. So it's like, yeah, I think she's smart, and I think she's her heart's in the right place.
Yeah. Did I hear you say something in the podcast about you had an eating disorder at one point?
I did, yeah.
What does that? Because I feel like in society, in a mainstream sense, a lot of people know what that looks like in a female sense. But what is it like? Something you don't hear about very often is male eating disorders. At least something I don't hear about an awful lot. So that's interesting to me.
I find it. I had a body positive model on Hardcore Listing podcast, Jess Megan, and we was talking about body positivity, and she mentioned like eating disorders, and through no fault of her own, she's very, very woke and a wonderful person, Jess, and I think a couple of times she sort of referenced eating disorders, and it sort of felt like it was attached to women, and
right.
I was like, guys can have eating disorders as well, and then she was like, yeah, of course, like, and yeah, and I've never really spoke about it, and I was just like, well, yeah, I was bulimic for years, and then I think when I went on Scroob's podcast, he brought it up, and I wasn't prepared for it, and I've never really tried to offer any kind of answers or advice, because I don't really think I'm qualified, because I've never really spoke to many people that have been through what I've been through. I know there's millions and millions of people that suffer and still suffer. I'm lucky I don't. I've not suffered for a long time. But I only really knew what I'd been through, so I didn't feel like I was in a position where I could kind of go, well, this is what you should do, and
right.
there's a million and one places now that you can go and get help for it, and things like that. Mine just kind of and I'm not. I've just got to choose my words correctly. I don't want to kind of make anything sort of casual about it, but mine just went away.
Right.
Like, and I didn't have any kind of therapy, or not that would have ever been a problem, but it just stopped. And so, I was really lucky. But yeah, I did see it the weekend. I've not watched it, but I taped it, so that's quite 90s, isn't it? I recorded it, and I see that Freddie Flintoff had made a documentary that come out about his bulimia.
Oh.
And so I was really interested to hear that, because I've seen Freddie's weight go up and down, and seen that he he stripped a lot of weight off to box, and that was one of the things that I stripped a lot of weight off was to box.
Right.
So it was like, I'm really looking forward to watching that, and I think to have guys like Freddie, that's obviously a very, very famous face in the UK, to go out and go, guys suffer with this as well. I think it'll make other fellas that may feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about it. We're lucky that we live in a world where there seems to be huge amounts of progression in both women and men talking about being mentally unwell and suffering, and it seems like the world is a more welcoming place and more understanding. There's still a long way to go, but I think it does feel like there's lots of safe places now where you can go, I don't feel right. And more than anything, now's the time, right? Because there's lots of people that must be finding being 6 months into lockdown a really fucking difficult time. People losing businesses and stuff, and people that are isolated from relatives and things like that. It's got to be so tough for so many people. And I'm just glad that we live in a place where you can now feel more comfortable about talking about these things.
Yeah, that's something I try to, or I've been trying to promote, or at least sort of echo during this show, is that there is strength in vulnerability, and I think there's a lot of men that need to learn that. And I didn't get that to begin with. I had a friend, shout out Jess Helens, who's always sharing things on her Instagram about vulnerability and self-improvement and everything. And I was just like, message her once. I was like, I don't get this bit. This is what I do sometimes. If I don't get it, I'll just ask her, I don't get this. Does this mean this? And if I get it wrong, or I'm absolutely ignorant, she never chastised me for it. She'll just lays it out. And I was like, it took me a minute to understand that the strength is in allowing the weakness for a while. Because all I was seeing was, oh, well, that's weakness, but it's not. There's a strength in being, in having a moment of weakness, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I think that's so important to push that into male culture.
And I think it's important to ask, and if you don't, if there's something you're quizzical about, then you're not expected to know all the answers. And I think it's a good thing to just go, I don't get this.
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Yeah.
And I think more people should do that. It's really weird. We've got a good friend where we live called Jordan Gray. Now Jordan, I don't know if you know Jordan. Jordan was a runner-up on The Voice a few years ago, and Jordan was born Jordan Gray, the man, and transitioned, and is a wonderfully talented and happy woman, and a dear friend. And we've had Jordan on various podcasts we do, and at first, because I've known her like so long, I was like, what can I say that? And it's like, and she'd be like, look, I'm not the spokesperson for trans, but just ask me like what you think, and I'll just go, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. And it's like, just ask, do you know what I mean? And it was like, because I just thought, I'm going to say something that's just going to be like, not on purpose, not purposely, but I don't want to say anything that's going to offend you. And because I don't know many trans people, and I'm glad that Jordan's super happy, but I don't want to say anything that will offend the trans community. And so it was like, Jordan, can I say this? Is this, and she was like, yeah, I'm cool with that. Like, and I'm sure the trans community will be cool with that, but I'm not the spokesperson just because you're the only trans person I know. But Jordan would be such a good guest on this podcast. She's wonderful, man. Stand-up comedian now, and she's fucking hilarious.
Right.
And an incredible musician as well.
Well, I'll speak to you when this is done, and we can try and hook that up. But cancel culture is a real thing, and I think there's a lot of people who are very worried to ask these things, and I'll just put it on the record right now. I don't want to marginalize or offend or say anything negative about any walks of life. I want to, it's all about love, but there are some aspects of cancel culture where if you don't know, people just go at you. They just go at you.
Yeah,
and I think that's really unhealthy. We need to preserve the conversation. I did see a few things during the whole the Black Lives Matter thing when it was really at its peak. I saw some things on Facebook where some people were, they were a bit ignorant, but they weren't hateful with it. And they were getting torn apart in the comments for it. And they were saying, I just don't get this. And I just wanted to be like, whoa, 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 stop. Let's stop point scoring. Let's stop this virtue signaling. This person doesn't get it. You have the opportunity to bring this person in now and educate them and align them with the cause. And gain a new voice in what's right.
Absolutely.
You're not. You're ripping them apart, and it was just disgraceful. Really,
it was a really scary, intimidating, powerful time when that in the wake of what happened, and social media was such a divisive place at that point. And I saw lots of people in, I've grown up in a very working class area of Essex, which for a long time was a BNP stronghold, and it's better now, but it wasn't the most forgiving place for minorities, as I was growing up. And so I have lots of friends. No, but I have lots of friends on social media, like most people do, that the people that you've been to school with and college with and things like that. And I saw lots of people just go, whoa, 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 no, all lives matter.
Yeah.
And yes, that shows an element of ignorance, but that doesn't. Some people, I think, didn't understand that and just thought, well, no, just be nice to everyone. And I think a lot of people said that with the best of intentions.
Absolutely.
And because maybe they wasn't as informed as they could have been. And so, as you said, it only takes one person to go, no, the reason behind this is this. That's why Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
But instantly it's like, fuck you racist. And it's like, what? And it's like, and it's just, and that's because I think at the time, obviously what was happening globally was, aside from the pandemic, was obviously that the news channels were full of what was happening in Black Lives Matter, and it was fucking terrifying. And and it angered people, but then as much as it angered the left, it infuriated the right. And then what it felt like to me, there was no middle ground. There was nobody going, right, look, I get why you're saying this, but this is what I think. Or, no, I understand this, but I think this. And the only way that you're going to get through anything is through debate and through conversation. Yeah. But I think people were locked down, fucked off, and it was just so divisive. It was like, well, I don't really, well, fuck you, you're racist. And then blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you fucking, liberal fucking lefty. And it's like, and it just was so, it was just a really horrible place to be. And I'm one of them, annoying lefties. And I knew that I went to a protest. I went to a Black Lives Matter protest with my daughter and wife, because my youngest daughter was really unhappy about what was going on, and as a parent I had to kind of weigh it up and go, right, well, look, how do we approach this? We was going to go to the London demonstration, and then when I looked at where it was, and I did not think the amount of people that went was going to go, and obviously it was very, very, very busy. But then there happened to be one in Southend, which is not too far from me. And I spoke to Pip and a few others that were going. And it was just weighing up the fact that we're in a pandemic, but I also wanted to make sure that my daughter had a voice, and her parents were encouraging her to protest and to speak out at things that she's unhappy with. And when we got there, it was amazing. The PPE was bang on. There was spots marked out on the ground, so everybody stood, and it was a peaceful protest, and the speakers were brilliant, and it was just something I'm so pleased I'd done. But when a lot of people I know found out that I'd done that, a lot of people kind of sneered under the fact that we was in a pandemic, but a lot of that sneering, I think, masked their opinions, which were different to mine.
Right. Veiled racism.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe not racism.
I don't know.
Maybe that's you fucking racist.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
But maybe it's not racism. But whatever it is, it smells funny.
Yeah, that's that. I couldn't have put that any better, Andy. I think that's it. And I just it's just been a really crazy year. And I'm I started this podcast moaning about the government and how my club's shut, but then looking at what we're talking about now, and you take a step back and you look at like the implications of what's happening to mental health, what happens, what's happening with Black Lives Matter. It's like there's bigger problems at hand. Do you know what I mean? But I think everything feels magnified during the pandemic, because I think we're spending so much time, especially going back a few months. Like when you the news feeds and the social media, it was heavy. It just felt really heavy, and I come off of Facebook because I just didn't want to hear didn't want to see so many people who I know's opinions.
Yeah,
because I feel I should respond.
Yeah,
but then I just think, I'm going to spend all day just arguing with people, and I'm going to get nowhere, and it's just going to be a more negative situation, because the people that were saying the things that I wasn't agreeing with are not necessarily are quite set in their opinions, and I could see that people were trying to sort of mediate and go, well, look, and it was just blinkered, and I just think I can't be looking at this.
Yeah,
it's like you can. I think, I just had to come off of there and just go back onto Instagram for a while and look at pictures of people's dinners and cats.
It was a heavy time. I remember there were moments between me and friends where it would be like, "Do you feel exhausted by this?" Like, but not even that we were like, in the streets getting really, really super stuck in. I did go to a demo and we did take a knee and stuff. But it's just the constant barrage of opinions and then awful facts about systematic racism, and then and all these statistics, and it just felt like the world that we were living in was absolutely fucked, and the pandemic, and it was exhausting. And seeing all the videos on Instagram of like peaceful protests being tear gassed, or people being beaten up, and it was awful, and it was a strange time for me, because I'm my town's deputy mayor, and so I had I feel like I have some sort of social influence, and I want to use that for good, but also I can't be spending all day in the trenches in the comments section battling people, and then if I go to a demonstration, I have to think about, am I doing the pandemic things correctly? Do you know what I mean? It was a very strange time for me in my position as well to
imagine
to get that sort of balance between being a good stand-up human and being counted as, these are all our friends and neighbours, our brothers and sisters, but also having that political responsibility as well, or at least perceived political responsibility, because I'm not that important.
But I just hope that when we do find our way back out of this pandemic, that we've learned something through this bleak time.
Yeah.
You know, we've learned to, understand Black Lives Matter, and we've learned to realise that we do need other people. We need that human connection. And when we're locked down, we crave it, Yes, we do like to go and sit down the pub. If they shut it at 10 o'clock, they've got to shut it at 10 o'clock. But if you can still go out and see your friends safely and tell your friends, I'm feeling a bit shit, or, just want to catch up and have a laugh and have a beer.
Yeah.
I just hope that when it's safe to do all these things again, and go into a club and hug your mates, and I just hope that, because something happened when we first went into lockdown. I try and run every day, and a runner will always acknowledge another runner. So if you run past some, they give you like a little kind of awkward nod or a little wave, and but you both seen the other runner coming towards you, so you generally sort of up your speed a little bit to give it the big one a little bit, and so you then do a kind of a slightly more exhausted kind of acknowledge. But that's as far as it goes, and like I say, where I live, it's not, it can be pretty heavy at times, and you don't say hello to strangers where I live, and that's why I find myself in Cornwall or the Lake District. You walk down there, morning, and you think, oh, this is nice, but where I live, that's not a thing, and but it felt, when we initially got like locked down and was allowed out once a day for a run or walk your dog or whatever, like, as I was going out for a run and I'd see someone on the other side of the road, they'd be like, morning. And I was like, hey, how you doing? And it was like, people were missing people. Yeah. People were missing interaction and human connection. And that's one of the things that that's a value that I hope we come back out of this situation with, that kind of appreciation for like, hey, and like, I don't want to be Mr. fucking lefty, but like whatever fucking preference or whatever race, creed, colour, whatever, people are fucking cool, man. Like, and the more people the more enriched your life gets, and the more diverse they are, even more enriched. Yeah. Like, you can only learn from these things, and I hope that we come out of this situation with a thirst to enrich our lives more.
Absolutely. And we're all going to die one day.
Exactly.
So we're sharing this one together. So let's try. Some people are just really hard to like, but most people, like you said, are cool.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people are cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You touched on something earlier that I kind of want to steer it back to, that the Mel C thing, where you said that you thought perhaps you weren't the podcast for her because you weren't a big super nutty Spice Girls fan. Now I think that poses an interesting question itself, is how much, when you do a podcast which is based off of curiosity and essentially learning about someone like what I'm trying to do here, is do you find out everything you can about them beforehand, or do you have to leave a little bit to find out? Because that's kind of the point, isn't it? So you want to do your due diligence, but also you don't want to be like just talking to someone and know everything they're going to tell you. So where do you go with that?
Right. It's trade secrets here. It's super brief.
Right.
I'll Wikipedia them just to check date of birth, marriage, kids, just so I find out they've got a family. I don't want to say anything if they've just recently been divorced or something. I don't want to kind of slip up or anything like that. So yeah, I'll just generally sort of check that out. And yeah, like that's it really. Like I don't do any in-depth research into their career because I want to ask them about it, right. and I genuinely want to be surprised and intrigued and so yeah, like I literally it was a bit different with maybe Mel C because I'd heard her on Desert Island Discs and and she's a fucking Spice Girl, so we all know a lot of that. But then, for instance, if we look at, I'm just trying to think of someone whose work I didn't know lots about. I had the guy, the singer from the Vaccines, on the other day, and I only really knew a few tracks by the Vaccines.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise just how big a band they were.
Right.
Didn't realise, their O2 material. I was like, wow. So I got to kind of find out about that and find out about how they got there. And that's what I'm interested in. And so I don't really want the answers before I've asked the questions.
Exactly.
So,
No, I think there's two schools of thought, isn't there? There's the person that's going to manipulate and steer the conversation to get the exact, I hate to say the word, content that they want. And then there's the organic finding out. I think I much prefer finding out. Obviously, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, like you said, with the personal research. But it's, that's what I'm tussling with, especially as the schedule gets a little bit more crammed. You can't learn about, you can't spend my whole week learning 6 people's life stories.
So that, you touched on the fact that you've done community radio a while ago. I think that's the fundamental difference between radio and podcasting.
Right.
So with radio, you've got an allocated time span where you've got to get, the key stuff from a guest, and if you look at TV as well, it's like, if Maxine Peake goes on Graham Norton, it's going to be like, right, okay, how have you been? Great. Give us an anecdote. Brilliant. What you plugging?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, on to the next guest. Whereas if she's on a podcast and that, well, we've got an hour or so, let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
And then that's when people really relax, and that's when people feel comfortable talking, and then that's when the connection happens. And then that's when you get the kind of conversations that I think people want from a podcast.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the greatest guys in radio to do interviews at the moment is Howard Stern. I don't know if you've ever seen a lot of Stern interviews.
Yeah.
But he cracks them open.
But Howard Stern's a different
beast.
Body of work. Yeah. It's like, he's Howard Stern.
Yeah.
So like, he's not going to get people going, man, play a record. And he's like, oh, I'm fucking talking.
Yeah.
I think it's, I know what you're saying. And have you seen the Howard Stern film, Private Parts?
Yeah, love it.
I went to the video shop in, what was that? Probably that come out in maybe,
I think it was 98.
98.
Yeah. I think 98.
And so when that come out, a neighbour of mine worked in my local video shop, and I went round there, and I'd always chat to her, but she was chatting to one of her friends, and I went and got the card from the video and put it on the counter, and she was like, "Hey Stuart, what are you watching today?" I went, "Oh, this." She went, "Private Parts." And I was like, oh, no. And like, her mate looked at me like I just obviously got some grot off the top shelf. Right. And I was like, and the more I was trying to go, well, it's about a DJ. And I was just digging myself in deeper and deeper. And it was like, oh, fuck's sake. I've just literally said, what are you watching? Private Parts. I just thought, can't say that in a video store.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much for listening to the first part of 2 of my conversation with Stu Whiffen here on the Giant Pod. You can check out Stu's podcast in the show note descriptions. You can also leave us a review, like and subscribe. That would be great if you could do that. Follow my antics on Instagram at Andy_S1S. This podcast was produced by the excitable Harry Williams. And make sure you tune in a couple more days when we'll have another episode with Stu Whiffen. We'll have part 2. It's very exciting. I'll see you then. Cheers.